welcome to the Foundations webinar. For those of you who haven't been here before, that's me. I'm hosting it from Foundations, and we're the national body for home improvement agencies. We usually go around seeing people doing training and workshops and generally chatting to people, which is a bit of a problem at the moment. But if anybody's interested in kind of online training or online workshop sessions, then please let us know. And obviously we can still do stuff over the phone. So the idea behind these webinars was that time and travel can be difficult. Obviously, travel is very difficult at the moment, but the idea is to bring kind of content straight to your desk or setting or wherever you are. So we've got some content from Foundations, and we've got from a range of partners as well. So use the chat feature, and we'll try to keep this moving along. And if there's more sound issues, I'll see what I can do as we go forward. So today we're going to do some introductions. We'll do a recap from the roadshows. We've got a presentation from Safe Spaces. We'll do a preview of a new report we've done on DFG staffing, and then we'll see how you're all coping with the current situation. So if you've got access to the chat box, you just say hi to everybody, just kind of put in what's your role and whether you're considered a key worker. I think it'd be interesting. So a lot of you came to the March round of roadshows, which we just about got in before everything started to happen. So thank you to everybody who came. Appreciate you turning out in somewhat difficult circumstances. And thank you to our sponsors who were Closomat, Stilt, Stana, AKW and IMPI, who supported us through the whole thing. And I was just going to go through the presentation I gave at the start of the day, which was around what you can do with your DFG process. So what we do is we go around to a lot of local authorities, and quite often things aren't quite set up as well as they could be. Some things have over time I've gone a little bit out of date, a little bit rusty, and then things tend to go wrong. And when things go wrong, you have to take time to put them right. And then the time you spend putting them right, other things go wrong, and then you have to fix those, and you get into this kind of vicious circle that more things go wrong as you try to put things right. And so we've got a section on the website. So this is the Foundation's website as it was a couple of weeks ago. And there's a section on DFGs and adaptations. And then if you go into the process section, most of the tips I'm going to go through here, there's more detail in there for you. So quite often, the DFG process is kind of looked at a bit like a sausage machine, but sausages aren't always that easy to make.
Getting to grips with the end result. Marketing Manager Paloma.
Woo! That's not exactly what I want. How come that's not coming out right? Bloody hell. Yeah, technical difficulties. Oh, shit. Ah!
You just have to calm down, take your time, and
It's a bit of an art form getting the perfect sausage. Right.
slowly, softly. You're getting it now.
It's good.
What went wrong? Mate, it's not going on. Guys, the mixture's too hard. Guys, you blocked the machine. We need more water in there because it's too hard. We need it moist.
Right. So sounds better now. Good. Right. I'll carry on from where I was. So this was the first of 10 suggestions for how to improve a DFG process. So number one was around smoothing the flow of completions when you're in a normal situation. But what I quite often find is that January, February, March, there's a rush to get jobs completed before the end of the financial year usually. And that usually means that there's not so much going on in April, May and June. Then July, August, September is summer, so it kind of flattens out again. And then October, November, December, it starts to pick up again, and then picks up again through January, February, and March, which doesn't match the flow in of referrals. And it also means that contractors can't have a steady flow of work through the system, which can make it quite problematic for them. So the ideal bit would be to smooth that flow so that it's more even through the year, so you get more even flow of projects. Second one was quite a straightforward, simple one, I think, is just put a target date on the front of your file when it's due to be completed by. So on a card file, you can either put a sticker on the front, or if you've got a paperless system, put some sort of flag that just sets out when it should be finished by. Focuses the mind if you see a file on your desk that should be finished in a few weeks' time, and it stops any other files kind of lagging behind. Third one was around a triage system. So at the roadshows last year, we heard from the Royal College about the adaptations without delay and the use of trusted assessors alongside OTs. So obviously having a triage system that you can use to do that, manage your priorities, will be really useful. And we're talking to Salford University at the moment about developing a triage tool that you can use in practice. So number 4 is around assessment checklists. So these are usually how an OT or a trusted assessor sets out how they're going to present the information following their assessment. And on the website, we've got a set of forms from Nottinghamshire, which I thought were very good. So there's a set on there you can have a look at, or if anybody's got any others that they think are good, then send them through and we'll feature those as well. But actually having all the information on there, including kind of key dimensions and all the information you need to make a job flow smoothly through the process, including anything the contractor needs, is really good to keep things moving along nicely. Public guide. So we all know DFGs can be complicated, and however well you're going to tell somebody what the process is, remembering that if they haven't been through it before is going to be quite tricky. So if you can explain what will happen in a nice, neat, simple leaflet, it'll reduce frustration, reduce calls, and you can spend more time moving cases forwards. The one that a lot of people weren't aware of when we did the roadshows was that there is a benefits data system called the Customer Information System from DWP, and that as a DFG officer, you can get access to that by signing up to an agreement. Usually have to be DBS checked to have access to it, but it means that you can find out if somebody is in receipt of benefits before you go and do your first visit, which should make the whole thing a lot easier to do. So you know whether you need to do a means test before you start that process. Number 7 is similarly with land registry data. You can, for the vast majority of homes that are registered with the land registry, they have their own online service where you can find and download all the ownership details. So it's a fairly straightforward process. It can be done by an admin officer in the early stages of an application. And again, the details of how it works are on the Foundation's website. Pre-start meetings. So this is where you'd arrange a pre-start meeting with your contractor to introduce the client and contractor to each other, discuss how and when the works will be done, make any specific arrangements, for instance, whether they're going to have the lunch, whether they're going to use the loo, what time of day they'll start, what time of day they'll finish, share contact details, sign the contract, and how they go about things if things go wrong. So I think it's one of those things where if you set up these up front, it will make the jobs you're looking at run much smoother on site, and it should mean you have less problems. Because if you look at the Ombudsman cases, the vast majority of those are about contractor issues. So if you can make that section of the process run really smoothly, it'll be a good investment and should mean less time spent sorting out things that go wrong. Number 9 is swim lane diagrams, sometimes called cross-functional diagrams. So this is where, rather than just doing a linear process through the system, you look at your different parts of the process and then put them in the swim lane depending on who's going to do them. It's part of a workshop that we do, or we did do, or I'm sure we'll do again in the future. But the idea is that you kind of slim down as many or as few processes as you can get away with, and you start to join them up. And then in this example, there's zigzagging about quite a lot, which isn't ideal. You get lots of handoffs, lots of delays in the process. So if you can streamline this, have as little zigzagging as possible and get rid of as many post-it notes as you can, then you should have a much better system to deliver DFGs going forwards. And number 10 was around case management. So every service needs a good database where you can collect information, monitor and manage processes and workflows. You can generate all your letters, forms, and emails. I guess ideally, once you've entered somebody's name and address once, you should never have to type that in again, where you can get all your management reporting and all your performance reporting done. So I know there's lots of systems out there that do this, but maybe now's a good time to relook at how you use it. And I think particularly we sometimes see quite a lot of DFG letters and forms that are in they're kind of in English, but still quite difficult to understand. So if you can spend a little bit of time and putting them into plain English, I think that really helps so that people understand what you're telling them. If you're interested, we do have our own case management system. You see it's used by all of Wales, some of Scotland and large parts of England. So it's got management dashboards, paperless options, Outlook integration, all sorts of bits and pieces. So if you're interested in that, we can still do online demos with computers that aren't doing updates. So if you're interested in that, then drop us a line. So back to the chat box. Which of those do you already do? Which would be your favourite tip to take forwards? And do you have any other tips that other people could share? So yeah, land registry checks cost £3, save time. For the Social Security ID, there's a copy of the agreement form. I think it's slightly out of date on the Foundation's website, but you should be able to get that through your housing benefit people. With the swim lanes, you can do those on a software system called Visio, or if you're using Office 365, you can get an add-in for Excel. We can program them in through Excel and they appear in a Visio diagram. I'd recommend anybody to the pre-start meeting. They save so much time in the long run. So Kevin from Norwich saying they book in the technical office survey, pre-site and work start date all in one go to speed things up. Yeah, Caroline saying if you work in a local authority on Facebook, no, not in a local authority, but you're saying this on Facebook, somebody in benefits will be able to get you set up and registered on the DWP system. And also in the process again signed up for the land registry. Now, a few years ago when I used the land registry, it was a bit that they only let one department in the local authority with a lead access point. I don't know if that's changed recently. Nicola's looking for some examples of good public guides. I don't think you do have to have authorisation from the client to check their housing benefits, Russell. So a few councils aren't means testing anymore, which speeds up the process. So an assessment checklist on OT referrals, or change your OT referral sheets, I guess, make sure that they're comprehensive. So Nick, I think from Herefordshire, is asking if that's no means testing for all that works, for all works in Leeds. I think with the DWP system, as long as you've got the agreement to use it and your DBS checked, then you don't need the client's agreement to use it. So a few people talking about checklists. Yeah, Helen agrees about the pre-start meetings over on Facebook. Yeah, Charlotte confirms you don't need residents' consent to use the DWP data, but you can only use it for DFG purposes. Yeah, I think it's still £3 to check the land registry each time. Anyone who uses the DWP system know if it includes universal credit? I think somebody said earlier it doesn't. Charlotte says it does. And Deborah confirms it does. Great. So Paul's understanding is and leads everyone in the LA is eligible, no means test, no tenure requirements, all eligible. Yes, and you can pay for the registry fee back as part of your DFG application. Okay, while you're chatting, I will now hand over to Amanda from Safe Spaces. I'll just make the host.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
There you go, Amanda. I think you're, if you switch on your camera, you should be ready to go.
Okay. So I'm Amanda. I'm presenting today from Safe Spaces. I'm a product advisor with them. We've been supplying safe environments for adults and children since 2000. And we're based in the northwest of the UK. And our safe rooms and beds are used in the UK and internationally now as well. At the moment, it's business as usual for us. We've, in this particular climate, we're fully operational. We've taken considerable measures to maintain our manufacturing, and all our office staff work from a cloud-based phone system. So we are fully operational at the moment. Our products are used in homes, in schools, hospitals, respite centres, and mainly for people with severe disabilities, often uncontrolled movements, seizures, behaviours that challenge, and also self-injurious behaviours. Many of the people who use Safe Spaces are on the autism spectrum, and a large proportion of our clients have sensory processing and or sleep disorders. So today's presentation, I'm going to just do a brief introduction on Safe Spaces, going to look at the evidence base for Safe Space products, going to talk about how Safe Spaces are funded and what support there is in tackling the difficulties with funding, and I'm going to look at what happens when a child has a safe space installed at home and then transitions into adulthood. And we'll look at the longevity of the products. We're a small family business. We're based in Tolmerdon, which is on the Yorkshire-Lancashire border. And we design, develop, manufacture and install a range of bespoke safe rooms and high-sided beds. We are UK manufacturers, which these days is quite unusual. And we do actually employ a local and quite a diverse workforce, and we offer apprenticeships as well. Our products are used in people's homes, in respite centres, schools and hospitals. We've got a 20-year track record of sort of listening to families and developing our products as a result of that. And we also offer a supportive wraparound aftercare service as well with the products, which with the type of vulnerable users that we have is very important. As far as best practice is concerned, we really do strive to deliver best practice. Our director, Paul Moroney, is on the board of the British Healthcare Trades Association, and we follow their codes of practice, which is endorsed by trading standards, which sort of outlines the provision of equipment based on a philosophy of care and support, which we try and offer at all stages, really. We have a very strong and effective partnership with New Life. They are the largest providers of equipment to disabled children in the UK, and we also provide our Voyager product as part of their emergency loan service, and that's an emergency bed. We try and get that out within 72 hours of a request if we possibly can. Obviously slightly changed at the moment, but we are striving to do that if we possibly can. So this is what a safe space looks like. This is a safe space multi-purpose room on the left.
We're just seeing your title screen, Amanda, I think.
Oh, are you?
Yes, looking at PowerPoint rather than the presentation. That's it.
Okay, can everybody see that now? So that's On the left, that's a safe space multi-purpose room. So it's a custom-made soft-sided room within a room. It's made from an industrial strength PVC, creating a compartment. It's on a steel frame. It has a soft floor, which is fitted from underneath, which is non-accessible to the user. And all the walls are flexible so that when inside, the user's less likely to hurt themselves on the hard surfaces of the room. So it allows the user access to the facilities of a room, but they're kept safe from features such as electrical equipment, windows, or anything within the room that might pose a risk. The safe space can be attached to the floor with minimal impact. For instance, some schools will have a Velcro pad to fix a safe space to the floor, or it can be left unfixed dependent on the user. If it's a smooth floor, for instance, and the user has a very strong continual movement, very often we'll suggest that they are fixed to the floor. So the safe space provides a cozy environment that can be adapted. It can be a high or a low stimulation interior, and it's always installed with a 25-centimetre gap around the outside. The idea is that the soft flexing PVC walls will flex when they're pushed or hit against or kicked, and the risk of injury from hard surfaces is minimised. Because of the thickness of the fabric, noise levels are reduced, and it has like a sound dampening quality for those that are on the inside. And the idea is that that can start to help somebody with their calming. Health and education professionals and families can choose what size and features are required. We obviously advise about the product, but we always work with a healthcare professional to give information about the user, so that the features meet the need. Obviously, in a school setting, for instance, then it's designed in conjunction with the team to make sure that it meets the needs of multiple users in a school setting, for instance. And also we make a range of customized high-sided beds as well. So when public bodies are considering funding equipment and home adaptations, they must of course consider value over the course of the life of the equipment. And our products are highly robust. There's not an awful lot that can go wrong, particularly with the safe space multi-purpose room. It's durable. They're used in very and often extremely challenging environments at home, in schools, hospitals, and we also rent out products as well. The safe space generally is a brilliant alternative to room padding. So it allows families, for instance, to keep the facilities of a room without posing a risk to anybody. So very often, if there are people here today that are looking at padding out a room and they're interested in what the safe space can offer, if you let us know, we can send you out a document which outlines the benefits. What it means is that somebody can continue to use the windows, the radiators for heating and ventilation. Electrics, curtains, televisions can be accessed by somebody, but keeping the person out of harm's way. So we've got a fact sheet that we can send out on that. So benefits of a safe space. After installing a safe space, we contact the family or the occupational therapist to get feedback on how the safe space is working for them. The main benefits that families and professionals tell us about, the top of that list tends to be sleep. For many families, the person using the safe space, including their family and siblings, have not slept properly for often, sadly, many years. The entire family are suffering from sleep deprivation very often. And the safe space enables the family to get their sleep. We've got some case study examples and some stories on our website. And obviously one of the films that I wanted to share is available on the website for you to watch. But as we all know, sleep very often is an important factor and does impact on an individual's behaviours. So improved sleep very often means that a user is able to start to learn to develop strategies for self-management of their behaviours. For instance, in a school setting, a school can start to reduce restrictive interventions such as holding, which can damage a staff relationship with children over a period of time. And the safe space can be used in a home as a refuge during a crisis and aid sleep as well. We've got a contact at Guy's Hospital at the moment that's asking to do some research with us in and around the use of a safe space. The idea being that sleep medication is reduced and a safe space is used to help promote sleep instead of using medication. We're working with schools in Leeds at the moment, installing safe spaces. We give training to staff there about obviously reducing restrictive interventions, and the safe space must always be the least restrictive option in regards to helping someone manage their own behaviours as part of their behaviour support plan when it's used in a school setting. So creating a safe space, professionals who want to create a safe space at home to support a child with say severe learning disabilities to stay in the family home are often asked to provide evidence that the equipment or the adaptation will be cost effective and will deliver the desired outcomes. It's very difficult at the moment to evidence that because research is limited at the moment, but there was a pilot study done and it was undertaken by Cerebra, who are the acquired brain injury charity, and Leeds University, and that was in 2017, and that demonstrated that providing an additional safe space for a young person with an autistic spectrum disorder with behaviours that challenge could provide enormous benefits for not only the young person but for their parents and siblings. In the study sample, it was found that an investment of £300,000 in housing adaptations had avoided social services expenditure of 1.5 million. The principal cost impacts were that the adaptations had avoided the need for young people to be accommodated, i.e. to become looked after children. And the most commonly mentioned wellbeing benefit to the young person was that he or she had space and somewhere to relax. For parents, it was they were less under pressure themselves and they felt healthier. But the most significant benefits, interestingly enough, were identified for the disabled users' siblings who were able to have a safe space, privacy, more independence, and the opportunity to start to invite friends back to the family home. That report is the Disabled Children and the Cost Effectiveness of Home Adaptation in Disabled Facilities grants, and it was done in 2017. That's just one example of evidence that's starting to come through now with the use of equipment such as a safe space. Transition. So a safe space is sometimes installed because of a crisis situation that needs managing. Challenging behaviours can become more pronounced during puberty, for instance. And during a crisis, an individual might seek a low stimulation environment as a refuge. A safe space is used as a tool. It is only a tool. And very often, if someone has learned to self-manage their behaviours, it may in fact no longer be needed by the time the person reaches adulthood. During transition, the user's awareness and behaviour can change, and very often we are called upon to carry out a reassessment, and we're very happy to do that with the healthcare professional, whether it be an OT or another healthcare person, to look at modifying the product, for instance, or looking to remove it or repurpose it for another family. The Social Care Institute for Excellence provides guidance about issues related to deprivation of liberty under DOLS or the Mental Capacity Act. And the main principles that apply are that any intervention must be in the user's best interests, and always must be the least restrictive practice possible. For instance, it may be that using a safe space for periods such as nighttime for sleep may be, and may continue to be, as someone goes into adulthood, less restrictive than, say, medication or physical restraint. We had one example of a parent sleeping holding her son, who was now 17 years old, and she'd always slept holding him prior to getting a safe space, and that was helping her and him transition into adulthood by having a safe space to sleep in. Article 5 of the Equality of Human Rights Act was drafted primarily to address detention within the context of criminal justice. It certainly wasn't designed to deny families access to necessary equipment, but it's always, equipment again is always, it must be in the best interest of the client, and assessment of needs has to be done. One local authority which we regularly work with now supplies our safe space, and they're drafting a contract with families to ensure that products are being used in line with the user's care plan, so that monitoring can take place going forward as they develop, grow up, or get older. Supporting young people with challenging behaviours to develop their self-management as they grow up can have a big impact on their transition into adulthood. The National Autistic Society report shows that autistic young people with challenged behaviours are ending up in mental health services and institutions. And there's a leader report which was done in 2018 showing the shocking statistics describing the premature death rate of people with learning disabilities who live in residential care, and that's compared to those who stay in the family home where that's appropriate, obviously. So the recent Adaptations Without Delay report in 2019 emphasises the need to provide person-centred outcomes through a more integrated and collaborative approach to the assessment, design and installation of home adaptations. And hopefully using our products enables somebody to be kept at home where appropriate and has a product designed for specifically to their needs. Just talking about alternative funding. New Life, the charity New Life, have provided a guide to how, well, it's a guide to the law, really, for professionals with regard to funding equipment or adaptations for disabled children in England. And we have links that we can forward. The Cerebral report provides evidence of cost effectiveness and the actual effectiveness of equipment. And we have case studies on our website providing evidence of the durability of products as well. When people come to us about our products and asking for information, we generally do send out a list of charities that have funded them in the past, And we also always obviously suggest that they look to DFG for possible funding as well. That's the end of my presentation. I'm sorry the slides weren't ideal, but I'm here if you have any questions at all.
There were a couple of comments over on the Facebook group. So Sarah said she'd recently done 2 in the same room.
All right.
And Alison was saying that they through a direct payment, Safe Spaces was rented so that parents could go abroad on holiday. I think it was on holiday. And she said all staff were really helpful and go the extra mile. And she wanted to thank you.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you very much.
Vetty was asking about if it's fitted to the floor, could it be funded via DFG? I think that's one of those kind of myths that's evolved over the years, that a DFG has to be fitted.
Yes.
There's nothing in the guidance or regulations that says it has to be fitted. It went back to 1996 when it said that there should be an agreement between the DFG team and kind of social care about who fits what, and it suggested that things that are fitted could be DFG and things that are not might be social care, but that was a suggestion for local policies. It wasn't a firm rule, so you can look at that how you want to locally.
Yes. We now are advising that it's fitted to the floor dependent on the user. I mean, they won't tip or anything like that, but they might creep along the floor if it's a very smooth floor, for instance. But certainly with the new information we have about DFG guidelines, it no longer has to be fitted to the floor to be a home adaptation.
Yeah. Sandra's asking, how would it be ventilated and kept warm?
I just picked that one up.
Yeah.
So that's all about good design, really, like everything. So what we suggest is the Safe Space has the option of a roll-up wall. I'm just going to go back to the picture of it, just a minute. And that roll-up wall, alongside it, has a person-sized door, which is also, all the Safe Space entrances are zipped. So what we suggest is during the daytime, again, this helps those individuals that are trying to understand the difference between day and night, is that the door, if you have one and it's designed with one, can be secured open, and the roll-up wall is open, and that is a daytime position. The ceiling is a mesh ceiling, which is designed for ventilation. You can't see it on that picture,
yeah,
but the ceiling is mesh, and so is the top of the white wall behind it's projected onto. So we try and put as much mesh into the Safe Space design as possible. And that's a daytime ventilated space. And then for nighttime, we suggest that the roll-up wall is put down, the door is closed, and the Safe Space is made into a nighttime space. They do get warm, there's no two ways about it, but where we design them, we try and put as much ventilating mesh in as possible. Hope that answers Sandra's question.
I think we've lost you there, Amanda. The audio was going a bit dodgy again.
Oh, sorry.
And Louisa was asking about cost. So presumably, if she gets in touch with you, you'll be able to discuss that with her.
Yes, because they are all bespoke and made to the size of the room, Louisa. We would give you a quote once we'd measured and decided what features you had.
Great. So I think that's all the question we've had so far. So thank you for that, Amanda, and thank you for sticking with us through the technical issues. And if you've got any more questions for Amanda, then please pop them on the chat, and I'm sure she can kind of type any issues in. And Sue's just put a note there about your main office number. So if you're on the chat on Zoom, you can find the office number there.
Yeah, will do.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you to Safe Spaces for doing that for us. And thank you for sticking with some of the technical difficulties we've had today. I think we've had a few issues with computers restarting, and I think Zoom are perhaps having a few issues with the amount of people using it at the moment. But we'll play on through this last bit. Was around a report that we're just about to publish. Actually, there's a couple of magazines have picked it up today, actually, on DFG staffing. So we did a survey, I think it was probably about 18 months ago now. We sent them to all the housing authorities across England, and we had 204 of them back from a mixture of districts and unitary councils. And we had an intern working for us last summer whose job was to delve through the data and see if he could make any correlations. And it was based on a theory of change model. So if you've been to the roadshows before, you might have heard me talking about this, where you look at what inputs lead to what activities, delivering what outputs, giving what particular outcomes that meet your goals. And with the theory of change, you kind of work backwards and look at what goals you want to achieve, what outcomes you need to achieve those goals, what outputs you need to achieve those outcomes, what activities you need to do for those outputs, and then what inputs you need to drive those activities. And then you can work the system back forwards again. So from the, this is kind of the overview of the work that John did for us last year as the intern. So for an average local authority, we found that on average, the budget or spend was 1.2 million, and they had 5 full-time equivalent housing staff. So this doesn't include occupational therapists. DFGs were approved. The average DFG was just under £10,000, and it was completed on average 116 days from application, which led to 110 homes being adapted, which was the output, which if you kind of follow through the theory, that kept 11 people out of a care home that year. So based on the data, that was the overall theory of change model for an average local authority. But if you look at that data in a bit more detail, which is what the report does, it started to particularly look at the number of staff against either the number of homes adapted or the budget that the local authority has for doing DFGs. And this graph, each dot is a local authority, and on the X scale is the number of FTE staff they had in the housing section or environmental health section, including any external home improvement agency. And on the y-axis is the number of homes that they adapted. So you can see there is some correlation there in terms of more staff than needed to adapt more homes, but it's not a particularly even spread. So you can see there is quite a lot of variation there. So John's job was to look at what's impacted on that variation. And this was one of the first things we looked at. We broke down the local authorities across England by the amount of DFG allocation they got. So the lowest 10% and the next 10% and so on. So we had each of these blocks represents around 30 local authorities. So you can see for the smallest local authorities, and these are ones that I guess are somewhere under $1 million or around that mark, then on average per member of staff, they were spending £150,000 of DFG funding. Then it went up a little for the next 10%, so up to nearly £250,000 per member of staff. And then across the rest of it, you didn't get any more economies of scale, really. So generally, most local authorities were spending somewhere perhaps just under or around £300,000 of DFG per member of staff, but that didn't increase with size of local authority after the first 10 or 20%. So we looked at where a local authority has an RRO policy or doesn't have an RRO policy. And you can see that particularly in 2018-19, where a local authority had an RRO policy, they spent more per member of staff than those authorities who didn't, which I think makes sense because if you've got an RRO policy, you're spending less time dealing with lots of the issues, particularly around the bigger jobs or maybe means testing. So it should make it more straightforward to so RRO for Charlotte is Regulatory Reform Order or Housing Assistance Policy. So if you've got one of those, then generally your staff are spending more DFG than not. Next one was looking at the average spend for local authorities that have a home improvement agency service or kind of a caseworker type service, assisting people through the process. And again, we found wasn't a massive difference, but certainly those that have a HIA on average spend more per member of staff than those that don't. And so if you want the full report, that will be on the Foundation's website sometime this week. So that some of the details are in a couple of the publications today. But it's quite an interesting report, I think, and it looks at a range of factors and does find that if you have a home improvement agency, if you have an RRO policy, and if you charge fees, then you're likely to spend more per member of staff than those that don't. And the other interesting figure was that if you charge a fee, then your average grant is actually lower than the local authorities that don't charge a fee. And those local authorities that do charge a fee have more staff. So it seems to be that if you have more staff, you can manage your process so that you have a lower average grant, maybe than those that don't. So I think it makes interesting reading. It'll be on the Foundation's website later this week. So as we go forward through these strange times, we're going to be doing some webinars to give some free training on DFG basics. I know a lot of you will have done the kind of live in-person session. We'll do some webinars on the DFG basics in terms of the legislation and regulation. On the DFG Champions Facebook group, a few people have asked us to do an introduction to means testing, and it will be an introduction because I used to do them about 10 years ago, but so it will be relatively short and fairly high level. So if anyone else is interested in joining that as an expert, then that would be good. We'll be looking at the DFG quality standard and going through the various parts of that, which you may want to look at as part of a self-assessment. I just wondered on the chat box, are there any other topics that you would find useful as a training session? Well, maybe you've got time working from home. So Francis would love some training on local land charges and regulations. I did have some training from Land Registry years ago on that. I wonder if they still do that. So at least we'll be interested in RRO policies and some good examples. On the Foundation's website, there's a map with I think there's about 160 on there now that you can have a look at. We haven't rated them in any way, but they're all there to look at, and we're adding some more this week, actually. So hopefully we can get well over 200 examples for you to look at. Okay. So somebody asked, Philip asking me to comment on Becky's point about contractors, which I didn't see. Scroll down, see if I can see it. So in terms of Becky's question, we have been in touch with Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government asking for their view. Haven't heard back yet. So it's something Francis is chasing up with them. And as soon as we get any definitive guidance from them, of course, we'll share it as widely as we can. So I know a lot of you will already be members of the DFG Champions Facebook group. It's a private group where we can have discussions about all these sorts of things. So if you're interested in joining, you go to www.facebook.com/group/DFG Champions, answer a few questions, and we'll let you in. So we'll be doing some more webinars going forwards. We'll work on the technology and make sure that any computers aren't doing updates at the same time as we start. But thank you for all joining us today and bearing with us. We'll do a video version with all the gaps edited out, so that might make a little bit easier viewing. But thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.